Hey, welcome to episode 36 of Scar Bearers. I'm Chris DT Gordon. It is a blessing to have you here with me today. Episode 36, I like 36 because it's a square number. As the famous philosopher Huey Lewis said, it's hip to be square. So I welcome you to check out my Linktree website. That's linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. You can check out my podcast, my YouTube channel, my speaking websites, and other things I spend time on in the social media realm. So please check out linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. Well, today's sponsor is 2021. Oh, bless you. Thank you for ending the year-long curse. Certainly, this is a new year, so all the bad stuff is gone, right? Right?
I think so, Chris.
I don't think so either, Wynn. Well, speaking of Wynn, I'm here with my friend Wynn Charles. How are you today, Wynn?
I am perfectly fine. And by the way, just a side note, you guys have got to go check out Chris's interview on Ask Wynn, my podcast, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yes. In fact, that is how Wynn and I met. She invited me to be on her podcast. And another thing that Wynn and I have in common is that we are both in the education realm. And so, Wynn, why don't you go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off and tell our audience how you got started in podcasting and education.
I may as well rip the Band-Aid off. For those of you that don't know who I am, and yes, Wynn is my legal name, W-I-N. Let's get this straight off that. And so I have a physical disability. My physical disability is cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a lack of oxygen injury at birth. I also have a brain hemorrhage, aka a TBI, which I got that. I was blessed enough with that after I got diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And on top of everything else, I am about to be diagnosed with asthma. So I have 3 disabilities in one, and I started the podcast 10 years ago, Ask Wynn, after I wrote a book about my life with cerebral palsy after my mom died. And so I got into the content creation field as I was volunteering at a local preschool, lost that job, and then fast forward to 2019, my dad passes away as well. And so I thought, okay, now I'm at the crossroads. And then 2020 comes along and Mr. Pandemic came along. Well, Mr. Pandemic made me lose my job again in the education field. So I thought, okay, I'm going into the full-time content creation field, and that's where I'm staying.
Sounds good. I mean, and the best thing is you can work from home. There's no one to boot you out of there. So I want to go back to the book when, a lot of people have different reasons for writing a book, and you said that yours was based on your experience with cerebral palsy, but not everyone with cerebral palsy writes a book. So what prompted you to do that?
Well, I was lucky enough to be blessed enough with 2 parents that didn't see that I had cerebral palsy. They saw me as their own child. They loved me for who I was, despite all the back and forth to medical appointment, despite the broken bones, despite the upgrades, wondering if Win was okay. Can we go to sleep at night, wondering if Win is going to walk in a hip spiker, which, yes, I have walked in a hip spiker. And for those of you that don't know what a hip spiker is, it's a cast that goes from your belly all the way down, covers your feet, has a bar in between, and I try to walk in one. Don't ask. I'm quite that way. Don't ask. And so, despite all the medical challenges that I had, and still have, I was lucky enough to be raised by two incredible parents, and I left a legacy for one of them. I'm leaving a legacy for the other one in a totally unique way that people will not expect. And that story is still sitting on my laptop because I haven't had time to finish it, let alone publish it.
Okay.
And as soon as I make a physical move in my life, I will be a full-time content creator on the East Coast. Thank you very much. I am going to do, if all goes according to plan, I'm going to do a cross-country move by myself in June. And my end destination is Florida, which will be a lot better for my health and a lot better for CP purposes. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best of luck in that move. I definitely hope that the whole country is a lot healthier, so there's not as many hoops to jump through or masks to wear.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because 18,000 feet above sea level doesn't help when you
Yeah,
have cerebral palsy.
there's a
And
little thin up there.
yeah, there's a little up. Yeah. And so sea level helps when you have cerebral palsy and asthma and TBI at that. So
So, what is the book called?
the book that started it all, well, I've actually written 11 books working on
Wow.
my 12th and 13th book,
Mhm.
but the book that started it all is I, Win.
Mm, that's awesome. And so, where could people find that book if they wanted to read where it all started?
People can find that book on Amazon, and people can go listen to my podcast. I'm everywhere, along with all my work is available on askwin.webelieve.com, and people can go find my book on Amazon and hang out with me on social media. I'm active on Facebook. I'm active all over the place. I'll be more active as soon as I get to the East Coast. I have surprise. I have surprising stories to tell my fans that I can't tell my fans yet, but I will be able to tell my fans what exactly went on in my life in 2019, and they only know half of it. You guys only know half of it. So welcome to Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and I will be documenting my journey to the East Coast. I will be, because so many people are concerned about me and moving and cerebral palsy. They're also concerned about me and the education system. So I will be documenting my journey to the best of my abilities, and we're just going to have a grand old time when I move to the East Coast.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited to see that unfold. Now, when you, I'm going to back up a little bit. You talk about seeing how you with these disabilities will, handle this move. What do you face on a day-to-day basis that makes it, obviously you have your physical disability and the asthma, but what do you face on a regular basis that maybe a regular person may not have to handle with or deal with?
Well, to give you an example, this morning when I hopped into the shower and I need 24-hour care, we had a mini power outage.
Ooh.
So yeah, a mini power outage happened, and thankfully I'm not on oxygen yet, because thankfully that I'm not on oxygen or a ventilator, otherwise I would have been up the creek without a paddle.
Mhm.
But because I need 24-hour help and I rely on my aides, and my STEM arm, of course, and so I need 24-hour help showering, dressing, and cooking. I can feed myself, but there will be a day where I can't um, feed myself, and CP can't get worse unless you don't control it. But CP with age, I age gracefully just like the rest of you guys. And so there will be a day, if I don't watch out now, that I will be up the creek without a paddle and I can't do anything about that. And I will be relying on more help than I have now.
Okay, now when you make that trek to Florida in June, are you going to have that help? I heard you say that you're going to do it on your own.
I am.
How much on your own can you do that?
I am going to make the trek on my own, but I have people helping me once I get down there. And once I get down there, I will have people helping me. I have a plan A and a plan B and a plan A and a plan B. I also have emergency plan if plan A and plan B don't work out. I'm really hoping for plan A, but we'll see. But I will have help. I'm moving because I need to be closer to family and I need to do it for my own health.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I was wondering about that when you said, I'm doing the trek on my own. And I'm like, but I need full-time care. It's like, okay, how is that working?
Trust me, it is working. I have got it all lined up, and we just have to wait patiently, and then I'll be making the trek in June. You're the first person to ask me that, Chris, because I'm making the trek on my own, but people know that I do have cerebral palsy, so they'll probably become confused, which on my next podcast episode, I will make that clear that I do have help waiting for me at the other end.
Gotcha. Okay. So I obviously, have no personal experience with cerebral palsy. I do know people who have it, but I don't know firsthand experience. So if, what possesses you to, do all these fantastic things, because you have accomplished so much. And I know you said that your parents raised you as a normal kid, as normal as one can be with these issues. So, but what keeps you going forward?
What keeps me going forward is basically my winning attitude, and that's what kept me going forward through a pandemic. That's what kept me going through the loss of my father, and that was traumatic on me enough so that I had to really take a look at my own life and go into counseling. I mean, this was losing my dad was one, and I thought losing my mom was tough, but losing my dad was even tougher because I watched him. I was his caregiver for 9 days,
Mm,
and I watched him start dying of organ failure. And so last March, April, May 2019, we went through the ups and downs. And of course, he didn't want to receive help. We finally agreed um, to kick him. To kick him out of here and place him back into the hospital. He said, I don't want to go back in. I don't want to go back in. I want to be here. Yeah, and it's like, okay, dude. And then I'll never forget it. The day 911 swarms my house, the house that I'm sitting in now, to help my dad get out the door to go to the nearest hospital down 30 minutes away from me. And I had to tell him I had to tell him that 911 was on their way, and he goes, I want to go back to the local hospital. I'm like, okay, dude. And then I personally had to scream at 911, don't leave him alone. He needs oxygen and he needs help, because at the time he had undiagnosed lung cancer, mind you.
oh,
And so at the time, he was saying, I don't need oxygen, I need help. And he could barely move. And by the time he got appropriately diagnosed with lung cancer, it was stage 4 already.
that's
So yeah, that was, and I remember as he walked out the door, and it was funny but sad. He goes, "Bye, Win," like nothing happened. I like, you're on your way to Valley View, you're on your way to a bigger hospital than we have up here, and I'm not going to see you again. You're not coming home. And yeah, and so those were, well, the last words he said to me was, I love you. But the last words he said to me as he walked out the door was, bye, Win. And he thought he was coming home.
mm,
And originally he said, Win, I'm driving myself to the emergency room. I'm like, what? You're going where? And so he I won't say abandoned me, because that's a really bad term. He was because mass had gotten so large that it was pressing on his lung enough so he couldn't breathe. So the doctor said, you need to go to the ER now. And I'm hearing all this, and he goes, when I'm going to the emergency room, bye. And so I got left alone at this house until someone came to sit with me, and that was my stepsister. Luckily, my stepsister was on her way into town, and when she got the call, I called her. My dad called his fiance, her mom, and then it all went to heck in a handbasket from there, because we didn't know what was going to happen. And to spin back to the winning attitude, when they told me, well, when my stepsister and my stepmom told me that he might have to go, my dad might have to go in for dialysis, because he took a bunch of Advil to mask the cancer pain and screwed up his kidneys. So that's why I will not take Advil. Never ever take Advil if you want damaged kidneys. Never ever take Advil, and pound the Advil, get damaged kidneys. So in order to fix the kidneys, they almost had to put him in dialysis, which was 2 hours away. And my response to my stepsister and my stepmom was, let's do this. Let's do this. I am my dad's number one caregiver / number one fan. So, and that never happened. But when he went into the hospital, I walked into his hospital room door, and he goes, "When?" And I said, "I know when I'm wanted." He goes, "When I missed you, number one," and it almost made me cry because he was in a shower, and I'm like, "You missed me? You understand that I am here alone trying to deal with you and your junk?" And then he goes, "Well," and then one of his nurses comes out, recognizes who I am, and says, "By the way, when I follow you online, I'm buying your book." Well, turns out that I gave this nurse a copy of my book. So you never know. My main point is you never know where your book will land up and who will actually read your book. And that was the proudest moment of my life, him realizing that, hey, maybe I should actually tell these people who I actually am and who my daughter is, and then we can look from there. But I said to my stepsister, when you go get him from the hospital, when he gets released, I want you to hand this to the nurse. And she was probably shocked when she got that, because we talked about it, and I said my book is on Amazon, and then she goes, "Well, I'm going into a hospice palliative care," and then she goes, "I'm going back to school." Me being in the education system knows how much a textbook costs, and I'm like, "You're spending your money on your own textbook. Here, I'll just hand you the book." So that's a marketing tip. If you guys have a book or a podcast, hand it to the person. Don't expect them to buy the book or listen to the podcast. Just take people's. I have literally been known to take people's phones and subscribe them to a podcast, or they figure it out on their own.
That's very kind, and that is a good marketing tip.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that freebie that gets them hooked.
Yes.
So I want to go back, and I don't mean to press on a sore subject, but like you said, you facing your dad's death was very traumatic. What was the first step you took to move forward?
The first step I took after I got emotionally and physically abused due to my disability, the first step I took was to figure out the first step I took while my dad was alive, and a lot of people don't know this, but I told my stepsister a white lie, which I still got away with. I said, "Well, I'm doing homework. That's why I won't be at the cancer diagnosis," because I knew if my dad, and my dad respected that I was in school. As a matter of fact, I'm still in school. And so my dad respected that I was getting my journalism degree. So I had to tell a white lie to my stepsister that I'm doing homework. That is why I won't be at the cancer diagnosis. And because I knew once they walk in without me, I figured I would be up to the quick of the battle because he was wondering where I was. And so I made up a white lie
Mm.
to tell him via my stepsister that I'm doing homework. Turns out that I wasn't true. I was making a plan for me, and I had to stay back in the hotel to reflect and understand, because I knew he was either going to pass away or we were going to go into chemo for him, and I needed to make a plan for myself. So that's what I did, and I did that on May 14th. By noon, he had the diagnosis by, and I will remember, I will never forget it. My stepsister, my poor stepsister, she's really good at bracing for bad news. And he made her tell me that he had cancer. He goes, tell Win. And my stepsister were in a hotel room with twin beds, and my stepsister is sitting on the bed, and she goes, Win, the biopsy came back, it is cancer. And I said, okay, let's deal with this. And then the next day I walk in to his hospital room, and I said to him, you look great. And he, of course, had a full-fledged oxygen mask on him. And he starts laughing at me because he knows my dry sense of humor. Where I get my dry sense of humor is from him. So he goes, and I said, rock on. And that was one of his favorite expressions. So first of all, I said, you look great. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And so he said, I want to give you a hug. And I said, no, because 9 days prior, or maybe a week prior, I asked him, can I give you a hug? And he goes, a hug is too painful. And so by the time he got to Denver, he wanted to give me a hug. I'm like, no, I'm fragile right now myself, and watching you go through your pain. No, a hug can't fix the problem. A hug can't fix my dad. So that is, and I'll never forget that I said, I love you, I'm going home, but I will be back. He, by the time he, in his final days, he was on oxygen, he was on death's door, and he didn't even get the part, I'm going home. He got the part, I love you, and was able to pull out weak, I love you, but not the strong Papa Bear, I love you. But that's, yeah, that just freaks me out. And then as I walked out of the room, his rehab center / assisted living home, I looked at him, he didn't even look at me. He scooted down in bed and looked out the window, and he was able to see a rainbow before he died, because the night we put him in the rehab center / assisted living, it was a rainbow, and he was able to see that. And so I'm like, well, dude, it's safe enough for you to go. And then at 4 a.m. on May 19th, my phone rings. I don't even recognize the number because the rehab center called me from a different number, and then I called my stepmom, and then it went all broke loose from there. And then my stepsister called me, and I'll never forget it. She called me at 6 a.m. and says, I didn't mean to call you. I'm like, what's wrong? I know something's wrong. I knew something was wrong at midnight. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing. I didn't mean to call you. Why are you snapping at me? And I'm like, well, and then by 8:30 a.m. I was literally screaming, I need to find out what happened to my dad. I need to find out what happened to my dad. And the aide who was here with me at the time, look, I have since apologized to her, but because now we're best friends, but she looked at me like, when you're half nuts, you're half nuts. And she just said, I'm going to do something. I'll be back in an hour. And then by the time her hour off was ended, her phone was, she was actually going to church, believe it or not. And her phone was blowing up, and she knew by the time she got back to me what had happened. And then it went back, she walked in, and then about 10 people walked in after her to check in on me. I've never had so many people in this house as of May 19th. She and I didn't even get to see each other / grieve because she and I were dealing with the herds of people walking in this house to check in on me, introducing them to her. My stepmom wasn't even home at the time, and then nor was my stepsister. So May 19th will never be a day that I will never forget.
Yeah, those hugely emotional days always stick with us, for good or bad.
They will.
Yeah. And so going, now that you're planning this long distance trek to Florida in June,
yes,
what are your goals? Like, and I'm going to follow that up with, who are you doing these goals for?
Myself, and I'm doing these goals for myself. And my ultimate goal is to finish my journalism degree and essentially put CP on back burner, because right now, just for a little bit, and focus on journalism, because right now it's the opposite end of the spectrum. And you're not the only one to ask me this question. It's right now I have to, the way my life is set up and the way my house is set up, right now I have to control cerebral palsy and then do journalism do my education stuff for CP awareness on the back end of controlling CP. But as soon as I get to Florida the way I have it set up, I can just do journalism work and do what I can for journalism work, and then have CP fall to the back burner, which is the way I had it when both my parents were alive. But now, not some, since 2019, I put CP on the forefront, and I'm getting sick of it. I am getting sick of it. I need to, now that I have a huge following, I need to produce content for my huge following. I mean, when my dad was really, really sick, I had to disappear for months, and then I didn't tell anyone, and I'm like, and then they got concerned again. When I fall off the planet, people get concerned because they expect me to do things. And with me organizing a move by myself, I have to, and still be in school, I have to literally fall off the planet and people like calling me, texting me, Facebooking me, what is happening with you? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you physically okay? And so I am lucky enough that I have the great support system that I do, and it's gonna be even stronger once I get to the East Coast, because I have stories that my fan base doesn't even know about yet, and they're gonna be shocked.
Well, I know that they are excited to learn about them, as am I.
Yeah.
And so, for any listeners who, have CP or have asthma or both, what is something that you could tell them that may spurn them on or light their fire to get them reaching for their own goals? Because you are very well accomplished, and I know there's so much more for you to do.
Number one, and it's gonna sound cheesy, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Just take the leap of faith and do it. And then the other one, if it gets too much, I use how many spoons philosophy is go take. If you think about a spoon, and this is stolen from another great podcaster, a friend of mine, Kelly Nerd Mental, and she uses the spoon method, and we in the disabled community use the spoon method. Okay, I have 10 spoons out in the morning. How many spoons will I be able to use throughout the day before I get to zero? And then by the time I get to zero, go away and figure out self-care.
Okay. And so one more time, I know you talked about it earlier. Where can people find you and your books, Win?
askwin.webelieve.com, and I'm hanging out on Facebook, and people can follow me on Facebook and follow me on this wild adventure that I've set myself out on. And then people are welcome to send me a friend request. They are welcome to DM me as well to be a guest on the podcast. And so you guys can check out Ask When, the amazing voices of teachers, which is a little bit on hiatus right now, but that's going to pick up when I get to the East Coast. And then the artwork of CP, all about cerebral palsy.
Excellent. And I have one more question. My audience loves to hear the answer to this. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, my favorite dinosaur, and I knew you were going to ask me this because we talked about this on my podcast. It has to be a T-Rex, and because they're huge, they're tall, and they can eat plants. And then the interesting thing is we had a dinosaur dig out here in Snowmass, Colorado, which is 20 minutes from me, and they found. So if you guys want to Google the Snowmass, Colorado dinosaur dig, that will send you down a rabbit hole that it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I have heard about that. That is quite the find they discovered there.
We made the national news, and we all did all that. So the dinosaur dig is something that made us really, really proud. And since you asked me what my favorite dinosaur is, I thought I would throw that fact in too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, folks, you can find Win at her various outlets that she just mentioned. You can find me at linktr.ee/Chris DT Gordon. You'll find my podcast, my YouTube channel, my speaking websites, and some other things that you might enjoy. Win, again, it has been an honor and a privilege to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Chris. And to all the teachers out there, Christmas break is on its way. And for those of you who are teaching online and in person, I commend you. I commend you guys. I commend you guys. I know Chris teaches online, but online has its challenges too. So I commend you guys. And if you need my support in the education field, I will always, even though I've stepped away from the education field, I will always be in the education field